Welcome back, G-Man here. We were just listening to the Roland SH-01A. I was sending it through the Time Factor for some stereo widening and the Big Sky for a splash of reverb. Otherwise, everything else was all happening in that little gray box you see there. And today in this video I will be showing you a few of those tips and tricks how to get the most out of your SH-01A. First of all, let's get the obvious stuff out of the way. If you're thinking you can treat this like a mini Moog and plug the headphones into the mix input, you are sadly mistaken. You will just get a straight feedback tone. The reason is because the phones can't be routed back into the synthesizer and through the filters and stuff. It can only go into the mix input, which is just a mixer. So what you have is a mixer sending its own output into itself. It's entirely possible to get sound out of this synth without using anything in the source mixer. So go ahead and set all the levers down for now. Make sure the VCA has this switch set to envelope and just throw the resonance up all the way. What this does is this produces filter self-oscillation. Press a note on your keyboard and then turn up the frequency. Sounds like R2-D2, right? What if we set the frequency down and then we start messing with our envelope settings? And then let's use some envelope. Uh-oh, we're getting something really cool there. That is your kick sound. And you can play and tweak these settings to get all sorts of different kicks. And the more sustain and release you put on your envelope, the more of that boom you're going to get out of it. You can make it punchier. Every time you turn the synth on, the system settings are going to be set back to the default, which can be kind of annoying. The way around that, let's go ahead and change a setting here, like the LFO. Make it the advanced one. We can save this on a per patch basis. I can go ahead and save this as a template patch over here. I like to put mine at bank 8, number 8. You may like to choose bank 1, patch 1. Just as long as you remember where it is and not to overwrite it, you'll always be able to have that and call that up whenever you want. So let's reboot the synth. We'll see that the LFO has been set back for us by default to the original. Well, we can set up our patch just the way we want it, and we can go in here and we can recall it. And then when we go to our menu, and it will remember that we had the advanced LFO. You can just set up all your system settings however you like it, save it as a template patch, and that will save you some time right there. Well, we have the LFO set to advanced. That means it can go into audio rates. So if we find a sweet spot, we can really make the filter sound a lot more dirty. Here's what it sounds like with these settings normally. Let's turn up some of the LFO. Even though you may have your synth set up in poly mode, when you're playing back a sequence, you can toggle between poly and mono by setting portamento all the way down and switching it on and off during play, just like this. Now I'm going to show you how I was able to get that sequence at the beginning of the video. Even though the LFO can't be synchronized to incoming MIDI clock, that shouldn't stop you from trying to synchronize the LFO to events that are happening within the synthesizer. Set this little switch over here down to LFO as your trigger source for the envelope. Then I programmed in this little sequence here. And I set my LFO rate very slow so that when I trigger a note from my keyboard, it has to obey that one instead. So let's hear what that sounds like. I'll play a bass note. See, now the LFO triggering is obeying the timing of my keyboard. And you'll notice the timing of my bass note doesn't exactly line up with what the sequencer is doing, but that's okay. That just gives it a little bit of nuance that's quite beautiful. Here I'll let off the note again. The LFO is triggering every single time it gets a note from the sequencer until I play a note from my keyboard. Oops, wrong note. Over here I can even modulate the VCF while I do this. In fact, if we have this in LFO trigger mode, if our sequence is slow enough, we will be able to use the LFO speed as a delay. Check this out. Increase your LFO rate until you start hearing Remember, we don't have to set our tempo down to 50. We can put it back to something respectable, and then change our note resolution. Yes, we have to have that playing back, and we have to hold something down. Do quarter notes, and then change our LFO rate. So it's just like a delay. It really is. User Jace Vaughn would like to know more about how I would interface this with my Eurorack modular. Well, I'm glad you asked. Here again is my Varigate 4. One of the main reasons I wanted a CV gate input was so that I could use my modules to send note data that was gated by probability. What does that mean? That means like it's not sending out a gate every time, and it organically changes with every loop of the tempo. So I can still do that. I can program a sequence here, and it's just spitting out 16th notes, but if I send the probability from my Varigate 4, it's not going to be regular on every note. It's going to happen sometimes and not other times, and it will be different every time it comes around. I would just send, actually this one, I would send one of my channels from my Varigate 4 to the external clock input. So you notice sometimes it will trigger and other times it won't. And then I will also run the Note CV out to another synthesizer, but have it be several octaves down, providing a bass note. We'll plug the CV into the pitch input of the other module and turn it up. And I've already got Basilimus throwing out a bass kick, and my hat's 909. So I'm running the output to my clouds module, and then I can add some effects in. It's being modulated by an LFO and something else. So let's just have a run with this patch and see what's going on.